G'day guys and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Australia podcast, powered by Australian Property Scout Buyers Agency. I'm your host, Sammy Gordon, and I have once again in the studio the man known as the Silver Dog, aka Gandalf with dust in his pockets, Jimmy Ibrahim, mate. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Gee, my intro is just getting longer and longer, isn't it?
The
segment is just getting bigger. I like it. How are you, Sammy boy?
Mate, I'm very well, thank you, bud. I'm very well.
Yeah.
It's great to have you back, mate. The people love the intros when it comes to you. There's a bit of extra detail, a bit of grittiness, a bit of girth. It's good, mate. It's good.
Who declined that?
Who would decline that? Probably everyone. But
it is good to be here.
It's good. Mate, look at the sunshine. It's beautiful.
Last time I was here, mate. It was Melbourne
average
weather.
It was Melbourne weather. You brought it with you. I flew you in. We're doing the first that. Bang. We need to get out of the door.
Now, the reason why I come up for this episode is because we have a lot of our clients, it's fair to say, we have a lot of clients in our 20s and 30s and some in their 40s, and very sporadic do we have clients in their 50s.
Your age bracket. This is why you're excited to do this episode, right? Because it's relating to yourself.
Well, I'm almost getting there. I'm a bit off.
Okay.
But we do have a few.
So you fucking smell a bit, eh? I can smell you, mate.
Are you going to get serious?
Mate, I'm always serious.
Because we do have a few of our audience that are approaching retirement or starting to think about retirement. And it's the age-old question, when is it too late to invest?
When is it too late to get started?
Yeah, and so you hear this. Actually, I know we're going to slant this towards, people that are looking at retiring or approaching that time.
We're talking 50s and 60s, yeah?
Yeah, but also I want to touch on a little bit on this topic, if you don't mind. And I'm throwing this as a little curveball to you at the end. It's because people always feel that it is too late. Oh, I missed out on that boom, or I missed out on that market, or this is not going to happen again. When is this ever going to happen again?
Yep.
So
I remember people saying after Sydney boom in 2017, we'll never see a boom like that again. Next minute.
Yeah.
It's always happening.
So we want to cover two, right? I think we can hit that one on the head about when is it too late to invest. We'll get into the 50s and 60s if you don't mind.
Okay.
But just for people that are listening to this, when thinking it's too late, I've missed my window.
Yes.
What would you say to those people, regardless of when your age is? If you've missed a big boom or not, what would you say to those people?
Look, man, there's people like from 30, 40 years ago. There's people that now, I know my parents, mate, they're in their my old boy's 70 now, my mum's 68. And I remember back when, they looked at all the booms that they wrote a couple of little ones in Sydney back in the 70s and 80s and stuff like that. And then bought one property, down where I grew up. But they would have seen come and gone so many booms during that time period where they didn't buy or accumulate or acquire any more property, where they've watched things go past. So I think everyone who hasn't continually invested and accumulated over time, I feel like they're always going to have that little bit of I've missed the boat, I should have done this, should have done that. But the simple fact, and people come to me these days, even people in their 30s, sometimes I get guys in their 20s going, oh man, I feel like I'm so far behind everyone. I'm like, mate, it is what it is, all right, maybe you didn't start in your early 20s or teens or whatever, but mate, you're still in your 20s, it's still an awesome time to start. And even people that are starting in their 30s and whatnot, they have so much time on their side. When it comes to the 50s and 60s is a tricky one because it really depends how much you've got and what sort of, what do you want to actually get out of it. But man, when it comes to your 50s, most people these days are looking to retire 65, 67, 70. And realistically, if you haven't built anything other than your own home, you may go, Sammy, I don't want to retire at 65 or 70 or whatever. And it's but if you haven't got anything, realistically that's going to support you, if you've just got your own home, then all you're going to do is be sitting on the pension. You have a miserable existence. So, if instead of retiring at 60 and maybe going to 65, 70, whatever, if you can build yourself a really nice nest egg in that period, or even just a really nice passive income stream, which really, in my opinion, should be the goal, because that's going to keep in line with inflation and with what you want to, with your living expenses and living a better life over time, I'd definitely be getting into it. When it comes to in the 60s, again, that's where it just comes down to what's your actual specific scenario. I personally don't ever think it's too late. And if anything, if you haven't got anything, you kind of want to roll the dice a little, and have a crack and see what you can create before you wind up work.
Okay, so we're basically drawing a line in the sand here.
Yes.
If anyone is listening to this and you're under 50, there is basically zero excuses you can absolutely build quite a substantial portfolio.
100%, man.
Because when you think about that, even if you were retiring at proper retirement age at 65, if you're below 50, even if you're 50, that's 15 years.
It's ages.
That's heaps of time.
Heaps.
So let's draw a line in the sand. But get it out. That's just one of probably your own limiting belief, right? For people that are thinking, I missed the boom. It's never going to be the same again. We're never going to get those yields again. That's all rubbish.
It's all rubbish, mate. It's all rubbish. You look at what's happened in the last couple of years alone, and then the little boom before that. And then you look before that, there's different markets that were booming, in different locations all the time. Man, there's always money to be made at different points in the cycle and in different markets and whatnot. There's always money to be made in property in Australia. It's just, it is what it is. You've got to move on and focus on finding the next market and the next opportunity.
And you know what, just without labouring on this point, but for me, and I know we've talked about this a lot, up until just before I was turning 40, I only had the one investment property, didn't have my primary place of residence.
Yes.
And I did have that thought, gee, I've missed the boat. I've missed the, what have I done?
Yeah.
I'm wasted my time and all this sort of stuff, even though I'd focused on business.
Yeah.
And quite quickly, I was able to change my circumstance, getting the right people around me and so forth.
Yes.
So even if you took that an extra 10 years before that, not even 50, like 40, and sometimes we get people that are we speak to them in their 30s thinking, I've missed the boat, I've started too late, and getting up themselves. Like, dude.
Mate, I remember the reason why this story is very close, or this topic is very close to my chest and something I really wanted to cover, was I remember my parents talking to me in the it was around 2010, 2012 or something like that. And mate, they were so adamant. They were in their, I think they would have been mid-50s or something at the time. And I remember them even talking about it in their early 50s. And like, we just don't have enough time. Or I'll do these couple of deals because I was literally trying to help them with cash flow deals because I was looking at cash flow deals back then, and trying to make things work and house and grannies in Sydney and stuff. And man, we could have done deals back then for I remember you could buy things, say in Campbelltown for around 300K, give or take. A granny was 100 grand. You're in for 400. The thing would rent for 700. That's a pretty decent little return. Yeah. But interest rates were maybe 6%. So it was only maybe surplus 100, 150 bucks a week, call it, or even maybe call it 5 to 10 grand a year. But it's a very short-term view of I could do 3 of those and I'm only going to be sitting on, $20,000, $30,000 a year positive. That's not enough to retire on. But you've got to remember when it comes to property, it's not you shouldn't be looking at it as a quick fix. You know what I mean? I'm going to do 3 deals and be done. It doesn't work like that. Unless you're doing big developments, but then that's its own completely different, sort of kettle of fish and thing as well. But what you got to realize is it's still going to take time. So I'm not saying you should be going out there and expecting to be able to retire yourself in a year or two. But if you had a 10-year window that you realistically were looking at, or depending on your starting point, 5, 7, 10, 15-year window, that is more than enough to build yourself a substantial portfolio and just get yourself to a better position than what you would have been if you sat in the hands and did nothing. That's what my parents had done. They essentially sat in their hands and did nothing until the last few years where I helped them with a few deals where they did quite well. But before that, they literally had done nothing, sat in their hands, and 10 years went by that they could have made a substantial amount of money, but because it wasn't an overnight success thing of an overnight win, they wouldn't pull the trigger on anything. And I think it always I always feel I feel bad about it because I always look back and I just it was just such a missed opportunity of what they could have done in, say, Sydney before Sydney went crazy, and then where they'd be right now would be a very, very different story. Because one final point on that 400 grand deal that I explained, a second ago.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what would that be now?
That'd be worth over $1 million.
So the deals,
or it'd be worth $1 million.
Okay, so those 3 deals, that would have cost 400 grand back then that were available, and your parents thought there wasn't enough juice in it, that each of those deals would be $1 million.
Very, very close.
So even if they didn't pay off anything, that'd be at least 1.5.
Yeah. Net equity.
4, 8, 12. Actually 1.8.
Yeah. But you think about
cash flow wise.
Oh, cash flow wise, man, there'd be minimum $800 to $1,000 a week sort of thing, probably $1,000 a week. And the crazy thing you got to look at as well is if you just paired those 3 deals up with 3 basic bread and butters in the same area, those 3 bread and butters would probably be worth 800,000 now, probably the 700,000 now. You had 3 of those, you usually sell them off, pay the others out and outright, and you own them. You'd be talking 120 grand a year passive income from 3 deals.
Pretty basic, straightforward plays.
Very basic, but looking with a 10-year view as opposed to a immediate view. And I think that's the thing, man. People got to be realistic. How far away is retirement? Realistically, not I want to retire tomorrow. Good on you, mate. You haven't done what was needed to be done to be able to retire tomorrow. So let's realistically look at it, because everyone says that. Oh, how soon you want to retire? People in their 50s, I want to retire tomorrow. I just want to be done. And it's okay, but if you want to set yourself up properly and not just walk away and then sit on the pension for the next 40 years, let's set yourself up properly. Have we got 10 years? Beautiful. This is what we can do in 10 years with what you're starting with right now.
So theoretically, your parents didn't do that. How old were they back then? 50 well,
mid-50s, I think it was. Yeah, mid-50s.
So for anyone in their 50s now, let's just say someone's turning 50 or mid-50s, up to 55, right? Would you say something very similar to that, what you're talking about, would still work in that context?
Mate, it literally would work for anyone. Even someone at 60, if they're willing to work until, if they're thinking of working till 70, which a lot of people, if all they've got is their primary residence, like cash in the bank or super, like it's devaluing over time. Inflation is literally eating away at what that's actually worth now. You know, people at that age group, and you got to be careful. Obviously, speak to your financial advisors and whatnot, guys. This obviously, I probably should have said this one at the start. With this one, it's not financial advice. This is a general chat in nature.
It's your opinion.
Yeah, it's my opinion on what probably can be done. But if you have a look around that and what can be done, man, so much can be done in a 5, 7, 10-year window. Regardless of where you're starting at, you follow the principles, you execute on the right way, you have the right exit strategy built in, a lot can be achieved in that time frame. And I think it's just like being realistic with both the time frame and what you actually want to achieve, and then bringing them together and executing.
Because the reality is, when you think about the average Australian out there, and especially our parents' generation, a lot of people retire asset rich. So the majority of everyone's circumstance, and we're generalizing here, but we need to take a macro view.
Yes.
They've paid off their house, right? So they're going to be debt-free at retirement, or they're maybe in their mid-50s, they might have been close to paying it off anyway.
Yep.
And by the time they do retire, they've probably got 300 or 400 grand outside of super, maybe the same inside of super. That's a very typical scenario.
Yes.
Is that what you find?
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got to ask yourself, and this is what I find, people retire asset rich because the dream has been sold to them. You pay off your house, have your superannuation, you'll be fine. But the reality is you don't have any cash flow. So if you if you want to stop working, where is your income coming from?
Yeah. And let's say that scenario, right? You're taking 300-400 in super, 300-400 in personal names. Man, if you're living, let's say you and your partner, let's say you're making even 150 grand a year. Let's say one of you is making 100, the other's making 50, which is pretty reasonable. That's pretty small amounts. Normally people in their 50s and 60s are making a lot more than that because they're at the back end of their lives. But let's even just say that's all you're making at that point.
As a household.
As a household. House is debt free, all the rest of it. Let's say you want to live on 100,000 a year, so significantly below what you were living on before, like literally a 50% cut, 33% cut. Sorry, obviously coming down from the 150 to the 100. If you were to live on that in terms of cash, and you've got $600,000 to $800,000, even let's call it 800. Say you got 400 in personal name, 400 in the super. You got that to play with, mate. 8 years and you're done. 8 years and it's gone.
And then what do? You have to sell your house.
Well, you're on the pension, man.
I know, but if you run out of cash, you either have to make the choice of living off the pension, or you downsize, selling off your house to cash in some of your chips.
Or
so
both.
You're actually playing
terrible position, man.
You're trying not to run out of money.
Yeah, terrible
That's
position.
a very common thing that's actually happening right now.
Can you imagine that, man? Getting a retirement against that point. I know that.
That's a very common scenario.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So what do you think people have been sold that dream? Like,
there's no dream. They just haven't planned for the future. And I think the issue is like people get to that point and they're like, oh, it's okay. Like, you know, I'll be able to budget and get through it and all the rest of it. But it's like, in my opinion, man, I don't plan to get to retirement to budget and to try and be really frugal with my money and not spend it. Like when I get to retirement, I want to be like, what does work for the last, or let's say the average person who might start working at 20 and then retire at 65. So I just work for the 45, 50 years of my life. I don't want to now sit there and just live frugally.
Count the pennies.
Yeah, not do anything because I can't afford to do it. Like you want to be able to live a good lifestyle and know that money is going to keep coming in ongoingly over time. And that's the way that I look at it and the way that I would like my parents to be able to live and everyone to be able to live, man. You know what I mean? Like that financial freedom is huge. And
it is actually a sad thing that's happening around the country. And I hear this, that people, like some people don't want to put on the heater in winter and stuff because they don't want to, they're worried about the bills and stuff like that. This is a real thing, and this is not trying to scare people, but I think it's something you need to take notice of, and make sure that you do not put your head in the sand, and you get the strategy in place. You got to make the decision now to get the benefit down the track.
100%.
And I remember something that you said to me. One of the very rare wise things that you've said.
Per day. Well, you make about one wise comment every 3,000 years. Still waiting for it, actually. Still waiting for it. That's actually to be decided or to be confirmed if there is one great thing per 3,000 years.
A bit of burley in the water and all.
What I had. These guys are.
So you said people in their 50s do one of two things. Okay. Generally speaking, you say they either rush, or actually they either do nothing, put their head in the sand because it's too difficult.
Yes.
Or they go out and rush and make rash decisions.
Or get sold a dream.
Thinking they're running out of time.
Yeah.
Is that you've experienced that a lot?
Yeah, definitely. It's something you see a lot. Even people going out and spending money on things that they think is going to be a get rich quick scheme because they don't have enough time left, and all those different things. And it's a surefire way to get burned. Like, take a step back. Go, all right, what do I need to actually retire? Okay, it's 100, it's 150, it's 60, it's 80. What is that number that you need to retire and be able to live comfortably to live within your, live beyond your, live a good lifestyle in retirement? Let's work back from that, create an actual sophisticated plan that's going to get us there, and then execute on the plan. You got 10 to 15, you got more than enough time. Especially if you've got the scenario you're talking about before. You've got a very tax efficient and a vehicle you can be reasonably aggressive with super. That by the time you get to retirement age, you sell down. There's no tax to be paid. So you got some really good tools and whatnot at your disposal to be able to have a great result and get yourself to a great retirement position as well.
Is it fair to say also when people get to that 50, sort of approaching 60,
yes,
a majority of their kids...
We're talking you? Is this your scenario?
Nearly there.
Okay. Is this a strategy session right now? Or
Thank you. That'll be great.
Okay.
Their serviceability, because they don't have any dependents at home, they got lower debt on their household.
Yes.
So theoretically, their serviceability will allow them to make some decent decisions in the last 10 to 15 years. Is that fair to say?
A lot of people, it's a bit of a myth that the banks take into account that you are getting closer to retirement age. But a lot of people think like, I can't go get a loan. But you can definitely still go get a loan, especially if you're full-time employed.
That's what I'm saying. Their serviceability will be better.
Yeah. They always take into equation that you are closer to retirement. But your serviceability is typically good, especially if you've got no debt left and you've got no dependents left at home. Perfect. Go out and have a crack.
Yeah.
100%.
Knock you back. Yeah.
I'd definitely go and have a crack and get started.
What do you think about for people, and the reason why we're doing this particular podcast is if any of our audience are in this category, then fantastic. I hope you're taking some value out of this. But if you're listening to this and you can see this in your parents, like your family, or there's someone that you know, and I know you're big about this, is about sending it to people that you might inspire.
Yes.
If you're seeing this play out with your parents, you don't have to tell them what to do and all that, but it might be something that they might get value out of. And that's what this podcast is really meant to do.
Yeah.
You're forecasting. If you're seeing your parents in a particular situation, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah.
So this might be something, you might be the spark to help your parents, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was always one, I have still, ever since all the way back then, like this is probably 10, 15 years ago, I remember always looking at my parents being worried about their position. And I still am these days because they haven't changed all that much. I've helped them with a couple, but they still don't want to do, essentially what I would love to help them do. Now they're a bit older as well. But I think like, what you got to remember is you would still stick to the fundamentals. Okay, so like it's not like anything really changes.
So the strategy does not change at all if you're 20, 30, 40.
So so this is where it comes into different things. I was talking before about the SMSF vehicle and what you potentially can do within that as well. Like how you get there could change a little bit, but the actual execution of, all right, well, I want 100,000 passive. The actual strategy of deals doesn't change to get there. So like we're not reinventing the wheel. We might just do it in maybe a more tax effective manner of how we actually build that out to consolidate as much as possible for the client on that front or for the investor on that front. And I think like there are some excellent vehicles out there that we can utilize in that sense to actually get you a better result quicker. Because a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, they look at super and they go, I don't really want to do anything. And I was like this. I remember in my 20s, this is early 20s, my accountant at the time was ludicrous because he told me to put more into super and I didn't even make that much. I was like, this is stupid. Why would I put more into super? At that time, it literally didn't make sense. But when you're in your 20s and your 30s, like people think, super's so far away. But you can compound, you can be aggressive with that, right? But when you're in your 50s and 60s, like super, like retirement age is so close where you do have that ability to get a significant tax exemption in some different avenues with that as well. So it's like, it's really looking at, okay, what properties do we want to put in here? How leveraged do we want to be in here? How much of this do we want to utilize? What's the actual end goal that we're really going to try and work towards? And then what properties do we do in personal name? What properties do we do in super? What properties do we do in trust? And then really build out a game plan around that. If you got 10 years up your sleeve, there is so much possible because like you look at what so many of even like our young clients have done in like a 2, 3, 4 year window. Like you compound that with someone who actually has money and who actually has serviceability and the ability to kind of scale that quickly in the early years. When that compounds, that compounding effect goes off and you get that slingshot effect of when everything pulls off and compounds. That's what you kind of have up your sleeve in that regard. It's a matter of planning for it, looking for the right properties and executing that strategy correctly, and you'll get a great result.
So you're really touching on inside of super, which for some people to buying properties within their self-managed super fund, you need to set up. There's a bit to do there, right?
Yes.
So you would need to have the right people around you, your accountant on board.
Yeah.
You would.
Anyone in this position, there are multiple people they need to speak to about this, right? Okay. They need to speak to a sophisticated accountant who understands this stuff as well.
Who understands self-managed super funds.
Yep. I would be speaking to a sophisticated buyer's agent like Australian Property Scout, someone that can help plan for your portfolio and what we should be looking to put into it as well. You also need to speak to a financial planner because you do need to get financial advice around this stuff. And that's why I say, guys, like, do your own DD on this stuff as well. But the one thing I'd say is take a little bit of a pinch of salt on that last one because most of the time they are quite conservative people. If you're trying to achieve a fairly solid goal in a 8, 10, 15-year window, their goal of let's just park it in an ETF or shares or whatever the hell it is might just be a bit too conservative to achieve the result that you're chasing. But if we create a game plan around it and then you potentially we take it off, that gets ticked off by them, gets ticked off by the accountant side of things, then we execute on that, there is a lot that's achievable in this space.
Can I ask you?
Yes, Jimmy.
I know you mentioned about the financial planner.
Yep.
Right. And I know this is a serious question.
Yes.
Do you believe in that, or is that to cover your do
I believe in financial planners?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Either do I. No. The reason why I say that, it's more because they're not going to give you the right advice. Yeah. And we're not talking about all financial planners, right?
I had a client come to me the other day and was giving me this scenario. We're 3 properties in. We've built this. He's $500,000 worth of equity in 2.5 years.
How old?
39. He's just bought 1 property a year for the last 3 years. He's literally sitting at $500,000 net equity. He goes and sees a financial planner, and the financial planner just goes, "Oh man, just chill. You're good now. In 4 years with our financial modeling, you're going to be able to buy your primary residence, and then for the next 30 years you pay that off, and then the rental income from these properties will pay themselves off, and you'll be sitting on $80,000 a year passive." And he came back to me, he goes, "Man, I'm a bit worried. I don't know if we want to do any more because I'm like, dude, you've just built the foundations. It's like, you don't go out and build the foundations of your dream home and then fucking walk away. You know what I mean? Like, you've just built the foundations of your portfolio. You're $500,000 net equity, and now you've got the ability, like, you're now at the point where we can blow this thing up and actually build up and get out of the ground and build the portfolio the way that you want the portfolio." And then I just did some very basic modeling for him on the next phase of where he was at now. And it made complete sense to him. And that's where, like, I think financial planners are typically like very conservative on that front. And there are some good financial planners out there. I'm just not a fan because most of the time they either don't recommend or they haven't done what they're advising you to do or supposedly showing you how to do. I don't take advice from anyone that hasn't done what I want to do. So you know what I mean? When I need advice from an accountant, I go to use a property accountant or a business accountant that knows exactly what I want to do because they've been through it that many times before. And from my perspective, when people come to work with us, they come to work with us as a buyer's agency and essentially as a property strategist service, knowing full well that we know how to build portfolios properly because we've done it. And obviously I've done it as well. And that's where I just feel like there's a gap on that side, and people think financial planning and all the rest and financial advising and the rest of it is all that. But there's just there's a whole gap in it in my mind.
In that scenario, right? And let's just play that scenario out, right? Because I think the thing that really jumped out to me was that there's 30 years. Like if you're happy to do that, it will work. But the opportunity cost is obviously you're going to be chained to your job for the next 30 years. That's the first thing. And secondly, you got to ask yourself, what else could I have done in the 30 years that would dramatically have changed my situation? So it's not saying it won't work. It's just that, is there a better way? Well, why wouldn't you?
Man, he's taken a conservative approach as a deal a year. He's sitting at $500,000 net equity. He's 39 in 3 years. And he literally, and the funny thing is all the properties were circa around about 300K. And he's sitting at $500,000 net equity in that time frame. And man, like realistically, I could probably have him retired or have his missus retired as easily staying conservative by the time they're 50. You know what I mean? Like, what are we waiting 30 years for? And they could still have the dream home as well in a couple of years. So
okay, so getting back, we're
getting way off topic there.
But that was a really important. That was a really important point, right? So when we're getting closer to that 50 and 60, when you said 10 years, is it fair to say then? So if you're 50 or even 55 and you've got a 10-year window, which most people will, as long as you're still working, right, there is no reason why you can't execute a strategy to get you to a comfortable retirement age. Let's just tick that box.
100%.
If you're 60, but you don't want to retire until you're 70, so you still got 10 years. You don't need to cash in your chips and cash out your super. Theoretically,
Exactly the same boat.
Exactly the same boat.
Yeah. Man, I think the thing is like people need to be realistic with what they're chasing. So if you came to me and you're starting from a very low base and you're wanting to be conservative because you're in your 50s or you're 60 and you want 300,000 passive, but you want to be conservative, sorry, mate, I can't help you.
Within 10 years?
Within 10 years, you know what I mean? I want to be conservative, but I want to buy one property every 3 years. And I said, come on, man. You know what I mean? Like it's...
Bit of self-awareness, right?
Self-awareness and openness to a strategy. So, and just being realistic with what you're trying to achieve. If you've only got a 10-year window and you're coming in, you're having a crack at the back end, just be realistic with what you're chasing, you know, and what you're starting with. Obviously, different people are starting at different amounts. But yeah, man, that's the way you got to build. Because it's what you want to do is you want to like build that nice base, right? Nice bread and butter deals, nice cash flow deals. And then you just want to work through debt reduction. So you want to build out exactly how many you want. And then you want to work through debt reduction. You let your bread and butters do their thing. Get rid of them, reduce debt, get into a nice debt-free position once you hit that retirement age with the income that you want.
Yeah. So for people who don't necessarily understand the strategy that we adopt and that dual asset accumulation, it doesn't really change no matter what age you are. No. But if you're in 50 and 60 and you went quickly over that, which is great. But the bread and butter deals, obviously, they're the ones that are going to have that nice growth.
Yes.
They're the ones that we're going to sell as part of our exit when we do get into superannuation, retirement age, right? So we're going to avoid paying a lot of tax on that, correct? And with
when you're in retirement age, at present, when you're in retirement age and you sell an asset like that, there's no tax.
No tax. So theoretically, if you were to buy 2 properties at 300 grand, you held them for 10 years, and they're 600. That extra 300 across both of those deals in retirement age will be tax free.
Yeah, and you also get the cash back that you put into the deals. So let's say you put in, 80 grand, 50, even just call it 50 grand, 80 grand, 100 grand, whatever you want to call it. You also get that cash back. Plus anything you've paid off the property. You know what I mean? So it's like you're probably getting in that scenario, if it was to 300 and double to 6, you're probably getting 400,000 back per deal at the back end.
And those 2 deals, just to walk people through this, and if we were to take that money, because we bought 2 of these other really high cash flow deals, the manufactured cash flow deals, and we took that debt, the profit, and we paid it down into these really high cash flow deals. Each of those cash flow deals will be making us what? By that stage,
well, if they're say debt free in today's dollars, you're probably sitting at maybe 30, depending on the price point of the deal. Just call it circa $30,000 per annum net passive per deal. So you think about it, you have 2 of those, you're sitting at 60,000 just for 2 deals. Like it's not that much, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you have 3, you're talking like 90 to 100,000. So I think that's where like when people want to chase, like let's say 100,000 net passive, and this is their goal and that's their time frame, guys, it's literally probably 6 deals. You set them up, you structure them properly, you buy the right property at the right price in the right location, let the location, the growth do the heavy lifting, and then you go through a sell down, you debt reduce the remainder of the portfolio. It is a very simple strategy. You follow the same strategy, you just maximize your tax efficient.
Some of them would be in super, some of them outside of super.
I would structure it that way, yes.
Yeah. So a lot of people listening to this that are in that age, fear and risk are the 2 big things that are jumping out to them. So it's a funny thing, risk, right? And we've spoken about this before. So would you say to these people out there that a financial planner is going to give them a modeling that is supposed to be less risky?
Yeah.
So less risky. But that situation for them, it means they're going to end up with less money in retirement. Yes. So is it fair to say that if they did a very conservative approach, it might be less risk to do it, but they're going to have less money? So isn't that scenario more risky than doing this scenario that you're proposing?
It always depends on what you want to get at the back end. If you only need a small amount, then maybe a more conservative approach is for you. But if you want
Who does? I mean, people are living longer, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, 100%. That's why I feel like it's like if you're at that point, I feel like it's a massive like disservice to yourself if you literally just like, I'm just going to sit on this, or I'll have my 800 grand and I'll blow it over the next 8 to 10 years. And then I'm back to the pension. And it's like, all right, well now you're in the pension, you're in your 70s and you've got 20 years of your life left and you live like shit. Whereas you have 120,000 passive and then you live on that in today's dollars, because it will go up with inflation, will keep moving on that sense as well. And then you get to the, you for the next 30 years, you get to let's say 65, 70, the next 30 years, you've got to add that money, which is beautiful, which is exactly what you want. You want to get to retirement and be able to live the life you want to live, or live a good life. You don't want to be scraping the barrel, man.
And this scenario we're talking about, do you notice how it hasn't involved selling our primary place of residence at all?
Yeah.
Because I think that strategy is a key part of people, like the financial planner model. there is a certain element that they're going to have to sell that at some point because you are going to run out of money. You can't put your head in the sand. Like when you really think about it, how else are you going to get away around it?
Yeah.
Oh, you might hold on to the house for another 10 years and it might grow a little bit more. Then you cash out.
Yeah.
But then you're still trying not to outlive the cash.
Yeah. I just don't see the idea of holding on to a primary residence, you know, or like, you know, in that scenario, just trying to survive. I don't like a model that's about surviving. You know, you want a good life in this scenario. That's what I think. Like, I know we're probably rambling a little on this stuff as well.
I think this is really helpful. I think we're hitting it right on it.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's good. It's just like when it comes to this stuff, it's a lot of people worry that they've missed the boat and they've seen 40 years or 30 or 40 years and they've missed all these markets. They bought the primary residence, had a great life, they had their kids, and now shit, retirement is in 5, 10, 15 years. Fuck, well, what do I do? I don't have that much now. Like, what are the steps? I just got to save everything I can. Maybe go have a financial plan model for 10 grand, 10 grand or whatever, and then just park some stuff in shares or whatever. It's like, people get so fearful around this, and like if they can't make those immediate huge gains, like I said, like for my parents, that was what it was all about. If they can't make huge gains, I'm not going to do a deal. Realize that time, to an extent, is still on your side. And absolute worst case, you get to the very back end of it, you sell them and you have your cash back. But like, this is where if you are buying, we go back to the absolute fundamentals of bread and butter. You buy into the right location, the right property in the right location at the right price, you are going to get those uplifts. If we're talking a 10-year window, that is literally, if you don't see one cycle in that and the market's been at the bottom for a while, you know what I mean? Like you've got so much propensity for excellent growth during that cycle. Plus you're building in cash flow deals that are going to achieve your higher than average net yield. You got 2 rents on one title, let's say. You're just going to get, there's just so much more in that movement. The velocity of money around that whole structuring is so much more powerful than just sitting on some cash,
I agree.
Or not knowing what you're doing and going through that scenario. So
see, we're running through a whole bunch of different scenarios, which has been awesome because obviously you're the expert. And I've got one more little scenario for you that people might be thinking. If they don't own their primary place of residence, right?
Yes.
And they're in their 50s, maybe up to 60,
yes,
right? They've got the similar sort of amount of cash.
Yes.
300 to 400 in super. They sort of miss that window of getting into their primary place of residence. Because there will be some people out there. What would potentially, I know this is, I'm putting you on the spot here, but you are the bull shark. This might be a stump Sammy moment, but what would you do?
It's definitely not a stump Sammy because it always comes down to individual circumstances and situations and how much would that primary residence cost. If that, and how old this person is, right? So
you're saying you would try and buy the primary place of residence, or just?
So this is where it comes into like, there's so much involved in it. It's okay. I'm gonna run with the scenario that comes to mind for me. Okay, the way I would be doing it is, let's say you had $300,000 to $400,000 in super. Actually, give me an exact number. Are we talking 3, 4?
Let's just call it 400. By that
400
stage,
grand in super, and 300 in personal.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. I'm just thinking about location. Let's say where they're living, the house they want to buy at $800,000 to $1 million. Let's call it $1 million. Okay. 20% deposit on $1 million home. It was obviously $200,000 plus your closings. You're not going to be left with all that much. What I would be focusing, and let's say they've got a 10-year window to get to retirement, okay? You got $400,000 in super. This is where it gets a little tricky on this front as well. What I probably would look to execute on, you'd go 2 to 3 good solid bread and butters in super. You would try and leverage that money as hard as you can, as far as you can across multiple assets. I'd probably go 2 slightly higher quality, leave a bit of cash in there as well. And I would start to rinse and repeat some. I would go again in personal names as well. You're probably only going to have 70, 80 grand, probably $60,000, $70,000 left in the personal name on that end as well. The 60, 70 you got in your personal name, I would be really, really, really trying to time a good, solid growth market, bottom of the cycle, right up to the peak, sell it out. Let's say you put your 70 grand in, you cash out another $200,000 after tax. I hope I'm not going too quick for people here, the way I would run it. Let's say you cash out your 200,000 plus your 70. I would roll that into 2 good, strong cash flow deals. Execute on 2 good, solid manufactured cash flow deals. By the time you get to retirement, your 2 in super should have gone through and doubled. Sell them down, pay no tax, take the profits, pay out the cash, pay out the debt on the 2 manufactured cash flow deals. During that whole window of 10 years, during that period, you should have excess income coming in because you're in the latter part of your life. You should be making the best money you've probably made in your life. I would be directing that additional funds there more than likely into pay down on the primary residence. If you were going with an aggressive pay down strategy in a 10-year window, you probably would have gone pretty close to paying out your primary residence. You would also now own those two cash flow deals virtually outright at the back end. And you're talking $60,000 to $70,000 passive. Is it that much?
So recap, that was awesome, but just go through just once again that process for people, because I think that's a good learning lesson for everyone. Because that was awesome.
Okay. This is when you don't have a primary residence. Okay. Talking 800 to a milli. We've rounded it to a milli.
Primary place of residence. Yep. Bought that.
You've gone and you've bought that. You've only got about $70,000 left in personal names.
Yes.
You're going to go put that into the strongest growth location you can.
Great.
You're going to roll that through the growth cycle. You're going to sell it at the peak.
Yeah.
You're going to clear your 70 grand back. Let's say you get your $200,000 profit, right? Let's say you bank 200 grand profit.
Yep.
You're going to take that. Sorry, at the same time as well, you also have gone and put the $400,000 in super. You're going to go put that into two good, strong growth assets.
Yep.
You're going to ride them to the peak during that 10-year window to retirement. And at the same time, when you've got your primary residence in your personal name, you've got your bread and butter in your personal name, you've ridden that to a boom, you've cleared your 200 plus your 70K back. You've gone and you've split that into two 135s. You've gone and put that into two manufactured cash flow deals. By the time you've got to retirement, your two SMSF properties that have doubled, you've sold, you've cleared, no tax. You go and take the profits. You pay down your two cash flow deals.
There's your income.
Your excess surplus income during that 10-year window would have gone through debt reduction on the primary residence.
Nice.
You own your two cash flow deals outright, and your primary residence should be pretty close to debt free.
Wow. I thought I could stump him, but that was pretty good.
Thanks, mate.
I'll give you that.
Thanks, mate.
I mean, that's on the fly.
You wouldn't know
right?
I do this for a day job, right? I do this every single day.
That was on the fly. But basically, I think...
Guys, if you look at the YouTube clip, I got nothing in front of me. Zero. I got a glass of water and I got an ugly mug straight across to me that, I don't know, maybe I put some notes on the ugly head.
The reason why I want to run through some scenarios, because I want to get people listening out here to understand that there is always options, regardless of where you're starting at. And I want people to get confidence and to understand that it is possible. And if you don't know what the answer is, you need to find someone who does. And if you find the right person that does, they will be able to help you because there's so much at stake to do nothing. Like there's a lot at stake.
Guys, as well, that's a conservative approach. So let me tell you right now, that is my conservative approach that you could do. I think anyone could do that in that scenario. You wanted to push the envelope and go harder, I could double that portfolio. If you trusted me and you went harder, I could double that portfolio in that time.
This is without having your primary place of residence.
Including the primary place of residence. You want to push really hard, I'd double that portfolio.
Give us that. Do you want
you really want me to run you through that?
Why not? Because for most people, like we're appealing to that scenario where people, if they've got to that point, they don't have their own primary place of residence. To save a bit of cash.
Okay, let's
do it.
So almost exactly the same scenario, but the singular one that we bought that was a bread and butter with a 70K cash that we banked a profit of say 200 plus a 70. I would roll that back into two more bread and butters, bank that again. So let's say you split that, and then bank that again, and then I'll go roll that into probably 3 to 4 cash flow deals. You could always ramp up a little bit more on the super if you wanted to as well. But even if you just had that scenario where you ramp up and then you roll into 3 to 4 cash flow deals, as soon as those cash flow deals are executed, you focus the additional surplus cash flow into pay down strategy on them. And then when you've sold those two out of super, you can obviously use that extra cash out of that to then go and debt reduce those even further. What I potentially would look at doing if you did want to push that envelope really hard, I probably wouldn't do the 2 in super. I would probably stretch your 400 and do 3 in super and really try and push.
We're talking same time frame as well?
I reckon I could do that in 10 years.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Well, again, this just goes to show when you're asking the question, is it too late to invest or when is it too late? The answer is there really isn't. And can I just add something to you? And we've spoken about retirement a few times and everyone wants to retire early.
Yes.
And I get that. Yep. It's more the choice to do what you want.
Yeah.
The reality is, I think for a lot of people, is that you will be doing something. Yeah. There is nothing to do. Like, what are you going to do? Like, honestly, what are you going to do?
Every day? Like, come on, man.
So you need some purpose. Yeah. And people can say, oh, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. I honestly think.
What's bullshit?
No, that you will be happy to do nothing.
Retirement, no chance, man. What are you gonna do, vegetable? You're going to go and do things.
Well, the old saying is retirement is death. Because you got no purpose. Yeah. What are you getting up in the morning? What are you going to do?
But imagine you got 100 grand a year coming in and you got a cruiser and you got a caravan and 3 months a year you go travel, and then you come back, you live at home for 3 months.
You got the cash too.
And then you got, that's what I mean. You got 100 grand a year coming in.
That's right.
And then you go for another 3 months. I'll go somewhere else and I'll come back. Oh, maybe this year I'm going to go for a month over to New Zealand or where Europe, whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're the options that you get and that you have when you go through that scenario and that purpose.
And further to that, I think people will find themselves working a bit longer. What do you think?
100%, man.
So if you are working longer, then all of a sudden you've created another growth window. So that 10 years could be another 10 years. Imagine.
Man, my parents were adamant they were going to retire at 65. Mate, my dad's 71 this year. He's still working. You know what I mean? They didn't pull the trigger all the way back then because like, it's not enough in this period right now. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to make enough from it right now, so I'm not going to pull the trigger. There's other things I'm going to be able to do. So they missed the window because they're looking for that thing, that golden ticket that's going to get there. Guys, there's no golden ticket that gets you there.
So they didn't have enough money. Do you think they would have retired if they had some other investments, or do you think it was just in their DNA that they just didn't have any? Like, what are we going to do?
No, they didn't have it, man. Like, what are they going to retire on? They ran the business, stopped the business, no income. You need income to retire. They run like a stock feed business that I used to work in on the farm. Man, once they stopped that, like they could sell that and then try and put that into something else, but like there's not that much money to sell it. You know what I mean? So it's like. They missed opportunity because there wasn't enough in it. But if they bought the right properties, the time would have taken care of it enough, especially if they paired it up with the right deals. And that's where I just feel like, guys, there is no golden ticket. You know what I mean? Like maybe 1 in a million people get the golden ticket. That's one in the, that's
don't bank on that.
It's a ridiculous, odd that you're not going to have that. Bank on what is 100% going to happen for you that you can change and do yourself when you put these things into effect. Literally, even that conservative plan that I spoke about first would be a ridiculous change and result for most people out there. Would be a ridiculous plan. You want to scale it up and go harder? We can push that. We can do that. But even in the conservative model, that's literally not hard. Like I could help you with that easily. Easily. Do that, knock that over. And if you're starting with very little, you got some cash in the bank, cash in super and stuff, like that is what's achievable.
Well, Sammy, I think we've nailed that.
I think we're good, bro.
I'm not really sure what else we can cover for that. So for people listening...
I just got to send you the invoice for the strategy sesh for the in his 50s.
Finally, the bull shark has given us some value. Purposely for our mature audience out there.
Mature audience. We love the mature audience. You're
we do.
Too far going with the
I'm halfway there. But the same strategy applies. And for the people that are listening out there, one last question for you.
Can I say one quick thing on that?
You go for it.
The reason why I say strategy doesn't change is because you don't need to reinvent the wheel to be successful at something. The strategy works. You know what I mean? You implement the strategy, doesn't matter where it is, how it is, whatever you do, you implement the correct strategy, buy the right properties, right area, you input the right cash flow deals, you're going to get the result that you're chasing.
I'm putting my hat on from someone who's in their 50s and 60s, just on the objective, like I'm being completely, and this is going to hit you between the eyes a little bit. Someone might say to you, what is this? You're 33. I'm 60. I'm 55. I'm about to retire.
What do you know?
Well, I'm just saying. Some people might say that. I know the answer, but I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm trying to cut off the excuses from someone to say, nah, this is full of shit.
I've looked at my parents for over 10, 15 years. I've looked at them, the missing opportunities because they're waiting for the golden ticket. And I can tell you right now, like I know I bought some of those properties back then, that time
ago. If they
ago.
listen to you.
Yeah, I mean, I understand them not listening to me all the way back then because I was in my early 20s. I didn't have that much experience, but like I have a lot of experience now. I've been through a lot of cycles. I've seen a lot of shit. I know what's possible. And this is where, it probably does sound a little bit maybe far-fetched, a little bit too much. But like I said, that first scenario is a conservative scenario. I would almost bloody guarantee it. Obviously, I won't guarantee it, but I literally could almost guarantee that scenario can 100% play out and happen.
Well, if it can work if you're in your 20s, what's the difference if you're in your 50s and 60s? It's like, it makes sense,
Morgs, right? The strategy, the session that we did with Morgan on her portfolio and broke down her portfolio, she's almost in that exact same category of what I said. Because what I said before is 2 growth properties in your super. She's at 5 deals.
Yeah.
2 growth properties in your super, 1 growth property that you sell off. Her first property has doubled. The money she put into it has more than doubled. She sold that. She's in that scenario right now in a 2-year window that she could then go off and do 2 cash flow deals, which she's got. And then you literally just focus on the pay down. You know what I mean? Like that's all it was. It's not rocket science. It's a correct deals, correct markets, executed correctly, bang.
I thought
Bob's your
I
uncle.
got him a bit excited at the end there. Put a few little droplets of blood in the water there just to get him circling. And he was swimming a bit slow, but then we got him in the end. Mate, well done. That was awesome.
Jimmy, thank you, mate. It was good.
That was brilliant.
Yeah, I got to say,
really
mate,
enjoyed that.
No, thank you, mate. It was good. It was good to dissect and dive into. I hope the listeners took a bit of value out of it, mate.
Absolutely. Surely people got a lot of value out of this. I'm going to send this to so many people because
you've got a lot of friends in that age group.
But also the confidence of people when you're getting older.
Yeah.
The confidence of people, and it's sort of if you've had a few hits over the years and you're thinking, you know what, I've missed my run. Nah, that's a young man's game or woman's game and all that. That's all bullshit. Like, get out of your own way. You can do it.
Yes.
Like if and I'm getting a bit of a tingly moment now because I want people to feel inspired by nothing is stopping you.
Yeah.
You can make this work. If your parents are in a bad situation, they can get help.
Yes.
If you're in this situation, you can get help.
Yes.
You don't talk yourself out of it.
It is 100% achievable, guys. Like, and obviously I take the piss out of Jimmy here calling him old and all the rest of shit, but like seriously, in all seriousness, like this stuff is 100% achievable. It's not too late. It's never too late. You can have a crack at this stuff. No matter what position you're in, if you got 50 grand and you're 55, there's still things you can do. There's still a level you can take yourself to that is well beyond where you are right now. So I hope I leave that with, I'm just going to leave that with you guys, let you have a good think about it.
Because what's certain is if you do nothing,
nothing's going to change.
Nothing's going to change.
No. And really, what's 50 grand in the scheme of things? You got 50 grand, you're heading into retirement, man. 50 grand is nothing. If you can roll that and have a really good crack with that, you can change your game.
That's right.
Big time.
Big time. Well done.
Jimmy,
well done,
mate,
Sammy.
Thank you as always, buddy. Great having you up here once again in the studio. Dust out of the pockets, ready to go.
Mate, I thought we were good today. I thought we were good.
Yeah, it's not bad, man. Not bad. Listeners, I hope you took some value. It's been great having you on the show, as always. If you did take value, if you could please send it on to anyone that you think might take value out of this as well. It could be someone, maybe your parents or someone else that maybe thinks they're a bit too far gone. Maybe it's someone in their 40s or in their 30s. They think they've missed the boat. And just the amount that is possible and achievable, it is massive, guys. So please send on to anyone you think could take value. If you haven't left us a 5-star review or a testimonial yet, we please implore you to jump on and leave either of those for us. We would massively appreciate it. Any questions, guys, as always, in the info box of the podcast platform that you're listening to, you hit the more info and there's going to be the little email address there. You can send in any questions. We've got some Q&As coming up soon as well. Make sure you send your questions in. And obviously on all the socials at Australian Property Scout on your Facebook and Instagram. Otherwise, guys and girls, thank you very much for listening in once again to the Scouting Australia podcast, powered by Australian Property Scout. Jimmy, thank you once again, mate.
Thank you, Sammy.
Until next time, buddy. Take care.